The best healthcare is there in ways big and small. There when we most and least expect it. We may not see it, but we feel it. It lets us know we're not in this alone. Everyone deserves a healthcare partner who never quits. One who's there for what matters. United Healthcare. There for what matters.
Hey, I'm Charlie. I really enjoy Ramsey County's Household Hazardous Waste program. They make it really accessible with their drop-off options, and they send out postcards every once in a while with helpful information. I drop off my household hazardous waste at the Bay West site. I like to let items in my home collect so I can bring a larger haul just a few times a year. I always tell people to check the website before they go. Chances are you haven't thought of all of the items that you can recycle, like batteries. When I recycle, I feel like I'm doing my part to minimize my carbon footprint, and it's easy and accessible to do so.
Want your boss to put some real action behind the rhetoric when they talk about making your workplace more inclusive? Find out how to hold their feet to the fire and demand diversity on the Diversity Dude podcast.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Diversity Dude podcast. I'm your host, Lambert Fisher, marriage and family therapist, award-winning author, and national speaker on the topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. And for those of you who are interested in even more positive and encouraging tips and strategies beyond what I share in podcasts like this, then feel free to check out my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, nationally recognized for the unique way in which it addresses the often difficult topic of multicultural awareness and diversity, designed for more than just therapists. If you are a helping professional in any way, Diversity in Clinical Practice can help you meet the greatest variety of cultural needs possible for those whom you serve, and it's available in paper and audiobook versions for your convenience. And whether it be through my one-on-one relationship building efforts as a therapist or my informing and empowering efforts as an author and speaker, know that my personal mission is to do my part to improve the world one strengthened relationship at a time. So, today I want to share with you a few encouraging words about how there's still work to do even after the death of George Floyd. So, in case it's not automatically printed on your annual calendar, May 25th, 2020 is the day that George Floyd, a black man, was killed by Derek Chauvin, a white police officer, who pinned Floyd to the ground and held his knee on Floyd's neck for several minutes. Some may wonder why I highlight the race or ethnicity of these two gentlemen. Well, it's not because I believe that the actions of these two individuals directly reflect what everyone who looks like or identifies with them feels or behaves similarly, such that we should judge the actions of others based directly on their actions. That would be unreasonable. However, the interaction between these two gentlemen on that particular day in many ways did have similarities to other interactions that occur between other individuals on a regular basis, not just in the city of Minneapolis or even in the state of Minnesota, but around the country and even around the world. This identification was a key contributing factor to the protests and riots which occurred after the murder of George Floyd, which also occurred initially in Minneapolis, but also eventually across the state, across the country, and also around the world. Why? Because prior to this tragedy, George himself made direct connections with so many people around the world that his long-standing deep relationships with everyone were missed? No. In fact, 99% of the world never knew who he was before that day. Instead, even though they didn't know George Floyd himself, they nonetheless identify with his experience in some way. Some, in seeing George slowly lose his life in that way, saw their son, nephew, husband, or friend. They saw how unexpected and unnecessary it was that he had to lose his life that day, in that way, that someone they loved or cared about could also lose their life unexpectedly and unnecessarily. And most importantly, that way, the fact that the legal system was and is constituted, there is very little that can be done sometimes to guarantee that that won't happen again. The question is whether next time it'll be closer to home. All that being said, the reason for me addressing this topic is not just due to the proximity of the anniversary of this tragedy, but it was also prompted by a recent index that was published that sought to identify which states around the country were the worst for Black African Americans today. To do so, they compared things like average household income, poverty rates, education attainment rates, home ownership rates, unemployment rates, incarceration rates, mortality rates, and more. In this index, Minnesota, a state which many residents did not expect to previously become the epicenter of social injustice, was ranked the third worst state to live in based on many of these factors. After seeing this, I was then asked what I thought about it. Specifically, I was asked if I, as a professional, was surprised by these results, especially considering all the promises of change that occurred after the tragic loss of George Floyd. In response, I answered that no, I wasn't surprised. This is not because I all of a sudden became a pessimist and believe that there's no hope for progress, even after significant events like this. Quite the contrary. I very much have hope and will continue to have hope that change is not only possible, but that it is happening and will continue to happen more and more over time. But if that's the case, how do I reconcile the two? Well, with that in mind, let me share a few factors that contribute to me not being surprised that everything isn't 100% better just yet. Consideration number one: talk is cheap, action is required. To put it simply, based on many conversations that I had, both personally and professionally, immediately following the murder of George Floyd, I truly believe that this tragedy had a significant impact on many people, locally here in the Twin Cities, as well as around the world. Many empathetically felt pain that they never felt before. Others felt outrage. Many others simply became enlightened to realities that they had always believed were a part of a distant history before their time and only now exist in movies. And now, instead, realized that it was a part of their present unavoidable reality. And others felt conflicted because while intellectually acknowledging the tragic nature of what happened, they also realized that they didn't personally identify with it as much as they felt they should have. No matter what people felt or didn't feel, though, these feelings don't automatically bring about change. As a therapist, I truly believe that empathy can be powerful, but only in parts the feeling itself. More important is what the feeling of empathy compels you to do differently moving forward. That reality that really determines its value. Unfortunately for many, their empathy for George Floyd and all those who identify with his experience stayed just a feeling. And for whatever reason, it didn't lead to them to behave differently in any way moving forward. Not that they were the cause of the problem that needed to change, or were in a position to influence law enforcement directly. However, whether it be through their personal professional conversations or the various roles of influence we all have in society that seem insignificant but collectively have power, while it must be made clear that many efforts have been made by many individuals and organizations alike, many efforts were also not made to the level or degree that the words were expressed or the feelings were felt at that time. And those making the efforts toward change have had to do so without significant support, leading to the conclusion that we have a long way to go before significant and lasting change will occur. Consideration number two: structures need to change, not just the people. While I'm a fan of the belief that in order to change the structures, we must first change the perspectives and motivations of the people who make up those structures, I also believe that there needs to be official changes in the structures themselves in order for lasting change to occur. It's unfortunately not enough to just change the perspective of one lawyer, one judge, one law enforcement officer, or even one political leader. Those professionals need to use their influence to change the structures that guide them and future generations in ways that call out outdated and biased policies and practices and intentionally make efforts to reduce unnecessary and unearned disparities. Let's be honest, this kind of structural change can't happen overnight, which leads to consideration number three. Lasting change takes time, but we can still start now. Just because it takes time to change doesn't mean efforts made today are a waste of time. It means that we must learn to be patient with our expectations while actively working toward long-term change. Now, here's the key. The best long-term projects have short-term success goals that help to not only motivate continued progress, but it also helps create better circumstances for everyone incrementally over time. Now, let me be clear on this. This is not an encouragement toward delayed gratification, as in, be patiently silent now in the midst of continued injustices and disparities, because if you wait long enough, things will get better on their own in some distant future. Absolutely not. Rather, my encouragement to you is to do whatever is within your power and ability to do today to identify unnecessary disparities and injustices, Call out the need for change for the well-being of everyone, especially those who are being mistreated, and work to create both long-term goals that can admittedly take time to fully implement, while also creating short-term goals that can have practical benefit for everyone today and create healthier lives and collaborative relationships along the way. If done well, these collaborations will lead to more creative and effective ideas for change and make widespread improvement a reality rather than a dream. And with that, I'll say thanks again for listening to today's Diversity Do podcast. If you have any pressing diversity-related questions that you'd like me to address on an upcoming podcast, or if your organization is in need of a shame-free or empowering guest speaker or training on this often sensitive topic, then feel free to reach out to me directly at www.diversitymadesimple.com. And if you know of anyone else who can benefit from a positive and encouraging perspective on this often difficult topic of diversity, feel free to send them a link to this podcast so they can be encouraged as well. Or send them a link to my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, available at Amazon.com. And as usual, I look forward to addressing as many topics as possible in future podcasts to help you improve as many relationships as possible at work, at home, and in your community. And as always, remember this: you don't need to know everything about everyone in order to have a positive impact on someone. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.
Tune in each week and find out how to demand and implement diversity at your job. To hear more, check out previous Diversity Dude shows on ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
It's not just another day in your life. Things are changing for the better. At Comcast, we see those changes, and we're thinking about how we use technology today to live, work, learn, and play. And we're building for the future now, so we're better prepared for the wants and needs of tomorrow. That's why Comcast is rolling out multi-gig internet speeds to more than 50 million homes and businesses before the end of 2025, making our already industry-leading network even faster, smarter, greener, and more reliable. Over the decades, Comcast has been your partner, working hard to serve your community, and will continue to be your partner. We're expanding our gigabits so you can enjoy the tiny bits that matter most.
Are you a woman known as a good listener? Do you have skills in de-escalating situations? Are you what they call a people person? Then the Minneapolis Police Department would like to meet you. Now in a rebuilding phase, the Minneapolis Police Department is recruiting more women to wear the badge. The department offers career options for women with a high school diploma or GED. There are also opportunities for women with 2- and 4-year degrees who are ready to apply their skills in new ways. Police work makes a great second career for social workers, teachers, nurses. Women in their 30s and 40s are welcome to apply. There's no age cap. You'll be paid while you train and mentored by veteran women officers invested in your success. Minneapolis also welcomes current police officers to join the state's largest department. Make a difference on the streets, working in your community, in a career with competitive salaries and generous benefits. Go to minneapolismn.gov and search police jobs to find out more.
Are you getting older and feeling concerned about staying safely in your own home? Or maybe it's your folks you're worried about. I get it. It's not easy getting older, especially when the house is starting to show its age too. There is help available.
Individuals want to maintain and stay in their own homes for as long as they can. In Rebuilding Together Minnesota, we provide the opportunity, we provide the programs for them to do that.
Rebuilding Together Minnesota has been helping eligible older Minnesotans and those with disabilities stay safe and healthy for more than 20 years.
Our central AC unit was non-functional. We had plugged a portable unit in to the living room. What ended up happening was our electrical outlet melted, and it was getting to be 90 degrees in here. Meyer was told about Rebuilding Together Minnesota by his daughter.
She said, well, Daddy, you need to sign up. I said, do I qualify? She said, well, you're a disabled veteran. You qualify.
So we provided a new air conditioning unit for the homeowner and also new electrical service, all through this veterans program that we have.
Thanks to Tom and Rebuilding Together Minnesota, we're able to maybe go out and get a hamburger every now and then.
To find out if you qualify, go to rtmn.org. That's RTMN for Rebuilding Together Minnesota. Or if it's easier, call 651-776-4273. and tell your friends. Trust me, this is news they can use.